nerd, but it is what it is, man. Maybe if more of us cared about being a nerd, we can have more insightful conversations, man. Education is elevation. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. I'll be going live. I might be live for a couple of hours today. I'm supposed to be going live later on too, talking about South Carolina prisons. Right now, though, I have somebody that caught my first live stream talking about democracy and how I talked about we should abandon democracy and how I made different arguments about why democracy was bad. Me and him was able to have a very respectful conversation. We really been talking about it like the past 45 minutes to an hour and decided to bring it on to the live stream, man. I'm gonna let Eric introduce himself, but in this conversation, the reason I want to have this conversation is because I believe there is value in talking about the parameters of democracy and talking about democracy as a tool, whether it's something that we should reform or something that we should move past. Y'all know what I think about democracy based off of the last live stream that I had. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely go check it out. But I'm sure those arguments will come out right here, man. Without further ado, though, introducing to y'all Eric. Oh yeah, introduce y'all Eric, and you know what I'm saying. I'll let Eric give him a quick little little shindig of who you are, and then get straight into your parts about your arguments about democracy, and more specifically, what were the things that I said that you disagree with, and then what you have to put up there. And I'm gonna cut you off at all. I think it's important to let you know what I'm saying. Let me hear your argument.
Well, first of all, Mr. Lee, it's nice to meet you. I really appreciate you having a platform where you talk about democracy, regardless of how anybody feels about it. I think this is an important discussion to have. And so thank you very much. Thank you for having me come on and for entertaining this conversation. I think it's important. And so my name is Eric, and I have a master's and a bachelor's degree in history from Arkansas State University. And I'm not an expert in democracy. I'm not a historian of democracy. I'm more of a social historian. My personal research is about U.S. colonialism in the Philippines, particularly how Filipinos are represented in colonial propaganda and the exploits of a U.S. veterans organization that paraded around the country's largest cities in Filipino blackface from 1904 to 1974. And so this is my thesis has just been published in January. And so let's kind of give you an idea of what I'm writing about, what I'm thinking about. And so, Mr. Lee, you popped up in my feed. I had never seen any of your videos before. And you made some very, very provocative arguments about democracy and what you think about it. And so I thought it would be good for anybody that cares about the issue that we kind of talk about what democracy is first, and then we can have that nuanced conversation about how it's applied, which I think are two different things inherently, as we talked about. And so I want to start off by kind of thinking about how we can orient our conversation in the timeline, right? Because right now, next year, we're 250 years in the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So that's a big milestone. We are 80 years right now away from the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Next year is going to be the 25th anniversary of 9/11. So it's a good time to ask us what we learned from that. And of course, we are here just having passed 1 year since the presidential assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life in Pennsylvania. And so the kind of the thing that I noticed is that the United States, it seems to be in crisis, and a lot of these important anniversaries of democracy. A good example is like a week before July 4th, 1876, the United States Army suffered this iconic loss at Battle of Little Bighorn with what we call Custer's Last Stand. And here we are fighting Native Americans right a weekend before we celebrated the centennial of this great gift that was betrothed to us from the framers, at least to that generation. That's what they were thinking. So what I thought I would do is I would talk about some of the literature that has kind of informed my opinions, just some academic works. We've got Pericles of Athens and the Birth of Democracy. This is David Kagan. This is a classic. This one is on free press right now. I don't know if that's visible. This one was written in like 1991 or published in 1991. So it was really oriented towards like these former Soviet states. They were supposed to be fledgling democracy. And it's a really good how-to manual as far as talking about the virtues of having a good leader and things of that nature. It's a very good book. We have Mitchell's Democracy Beginning, Democracy's Beginning, the Athenian Story. This is on Yale. And it's a good companion book to Kagan's work. We've got this big tome. You see how thick it is? James T. Falkenberg's Toward Democracy, The Struggle for Self-Rule in European and American Thought. And he has some very good ideas in here. This was published in 2016. We have Evans's The Coming of the Third Reich. This is on Penguin Press. And this has a lot to do about these cracks in democracy that occurred under Weimar and some of the things that were, this Weimar Republic is kind of a case study. It's just kind of something to throw out there. This one is one that I really like. It's Volk's Moral Minorities and the Makings of American Democracy. This has a lot of very interesting stuff in here that pertains to my research and pertains to this conversation. And lastly, and certainly not least, we have Stephen Hahn's A Nation Under Our Feet, Black Political Struggles in the Rural South from Slavery to the Great Migration. So this has a lot to do with kinship networks and autonomy and stuff like that. And so this is sort of the literature that I drew from when I was thinking about this, because it's, you know, whether or not one is a student, we still are affected by everything. And, you know, we're faced in unprecedented times where, you know, we have to ask ourselves, do we have to act? You know, do we have to go out there and march, or more than that? You know, and if we were analyzing any other country right now, we would be thinking, well, right now we've certainly got this society over here that we're looking at. It's got these two factions that are horribly divided, and one of them is making a lot of moves. And it looks like if they don't meet any kind of resistance, then this other faction is going to take over. Okay, and so, you know, then in the midst of that, I see this video that's saying, hey, should we bother to reclaim democracy? And sir, you got my attention, you know, because this is something.
Definitely, man. Democracy ain't ever claimed me. Democracy ain't ever claimed us. You feel me? Democracy claimed cis body white men. You feel me? That's who democracy, I feel like, claims, man. The ideas of democracy, it all comes from this this identity of the Greeks and Athenians, you feel me, being able to talk about how can we get power away from the aristocrats. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get that. You know what I mean? To me, the distinction becomes from how do we get to this idea of freedom and humanity with this tool of democracy, while acknowledging that freedom and humanity has been raped. You feel me? That they have been messed up by democracy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, to me, it's like the very things democracy is supposed to preserve, the very things that democracy is supposed to be able to justify we get, is the very things that I think that democracy obliterates.
Okay. Well, I came and prepared to talk about some, you know, what democracy is, right? Because I think that, like you said in the previous video, you said, like, you know, when if democracy resulted in Trump, or democracy results in this very corrupt leader, is this a model? Is this a viable model that we want to use going forward? And that's a good question. Okay. But I think, like, before we can really have that question about, like, some sort of a new form of government, I think we really need to sit there and evaluate, you know, what democracy is, how it works, or how it's supposed to work, and the components that have to be maintained in order for this thing to work. And so there are
going bust. I've been dying to hear these components you're going to give me.
Okay, and these are really in no particular order, but I think these are all very important to consider. I mean, like, first and foremost, I think people have to have loyalty to the principles of the Constitution. Okay, like this idea of equal protection under the law. Like, if it hasn't been applied, we need to demand that it's applied. You know, I like to live in a country where I can criticize my government and not risk going to jail. We can have conversations like this and not face any type of repercussions for it. And so people have to decide, okay, is this a type of government that we want to have? Because if we don't agree that the Constitution is suitable for us in this particular moment, then we're going to lose it, and we might as well call the country something else, because there won't be any semblance left. Okay, and so another one of these components is that you have to have deliberations. You have to discuss how legislation is crafted, who it affects. You know, and this is all, like, this is all kind of just basic stuff that you hear about democracy, right? Pluralism, this concept of one of the most important components, multiculturalism, pluralism, popular sovereignty, these ideas, I think they're very important. Uh, Autonomy, equality, freedom of expression. I mean, all of these things are how we understand what we understand to be, some of these things are institutions, and some of these things are values and processes, and one of which, is like free and fair elections. We have to have free and fair elections, and we have to have, like you, Mr. Lee, we have to have a free and honest press that educates the citizenry in the maintenance of their democracy. And that's a critical component that we're lacking currently. We have to have, of course, checks and balances, and we have to have a justice system that is fair and equitable for everybody. So when we get back to what I mean, like when we say this loyalty to the principles of the Constitution, we have to quantify what those principles are.
I'm about to ask you too.
And who they apply to. And they better apply to everybody or they're not going to work. I don't want to stand for that. I'm tired of living in a world where I witness inequality and all this kind of stuff every day. And, and it's time that we, do something about it, right? And Kloppenberg writes about this ethic of reciprocity. It's also kind of important. What you have is, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
What we have is this ethic of reciprocity. And in our country, when we have power that shifts back and forth, the majority becomes the minority, then what we have to have is we have to have a majority that protects the rights of the minority. And then when the minority comes back in power, then they're supposed to let, the new minority is supposed to let the majority govern. Okay, and we have to have these things. I don't know if there's something going on with the sound. I can't hear you.
No, I ain't saying that. I'm just like,
okay. We have to have these things in order for democracy to work, and we don't have a lot of these. So this is why I say that rather than framing the conversation about should democracy be reclaimed, I think it's something that has to be maintained, and that we all have to feel like we all have a stake in order for to make this thing work, right? And most important,
that's where about you finish.
There's another aspect, and that's academic freedom. And I come from a history department, and so and last night it occurred to me that academic freedom is not necessarily about the freedom to have an honest and principled dialogue about our society, but it also is about being able to research cures for diseases and climate science and inventing things that can change our life. All of these kind of fall under the umbrella of academic freedom. But unfortunately, we don't have a media that's really talking about academic freedom for the most part. And so, another component is the infrastructure. We have to have infrastructure in place for people to go to their places of employment, participate in the economy, disseminate information, especially as it applies to their freedom of expression and freedom of movement and these things. We have to have a high quality standard of education in this country to have an educated, informed, and engaged populace. Okay. And then what these scholars argue, and I think it was Mitchell, is in the absence of some of these things or all of these things, like we have in our current system, we need a profoundly great leader who is able to make crucial decisions at very important moments in time. Like JFK, for example, when during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Khrushchev sent him a very aggressive telegram, and it was very warlike and very posturing, and everybody in his cabinet was upset about it and wanted him to respond. And a few minutes later, another one comes in, and it's diplomatic. And Kennedy decides to respond to the diplomatic one, and thus, at least in that time, we averted a crisis. And so that's what I think, this, making good leaders and making crucial decisions at crucial times. And these scholars, they argue that when we look back and we look back at Athens and we think about it being, the foundation of our language, of Western civilization and culture, that they ascribe the greatness that we ascribe to that, like the art and the sculpture, Greek philosophy, mathematics, all of that. It was because of democracy, not in spite of it. And last time you mentioned that, and I can feel you a lot on this when you mentioned, like you're coming from a position of nihilism, pessimism, and I feel the same way because I'm a well-seasoned cynic. Here I am trying to advocate that people get up and march and fight for their democracy, when at the same time I wonder if it's even worth it because of the way that the situation is going on right now. And just this morning, Francisca Albanese said today, she's the UN Special Rapporteur. She's one of the loudest and most brilliant voices on Gaza. She said, hope is a discipline. Okay, so maybe that's something. I like to hope that things are going to get better, but I don't know. My life experience teaches me a little different sometimes. And so that being said, I think democracy is something that we should all view as sacrosanct. This idea that we can go out and speak our minds and protest and be free, and the things that they told us when we were children, that's being threatened right now. And so I guess I say I'm curious, to your questions and comments and stuff like that.
To me, like my response would be like, when you talk about loyalty or deliberation or infrastructure, those things aren't cornered by the market of democracy. I think that loyalty and deliberation and infrastructure are things that we can find present that exist outside of a democratic structure. And I think that idea is what it allows for us to view democracy as being a thing that we always have to reform, regardless of how bad democracy has been, regardless of how, it's always that democracy is something to be reformed. To me, thinking about it, you said the first thing you said that the components of democracy is having loyalty to the Constitution. The framers of the Constitution had no loyalty to the people. The framers of the Constitution had loyalty to the Constitution itself. We understand that when it comes to deliberation, the Constitution literally was created with no deliberation. We know that deliberation to me is being able to account for multiplicity of voices that allows us to create dialogue. The deliberation that happened for the Constitution was one that was exclusionary, based off of white men thinking about land and thinking about people that don't have land not having it, showing that the framers of the Constitution wasn't even loyal to their fellow white men. They had to have land. So to me, it's showing that the idea of democracy in America has always already been bankrupt. Like I said in my last video, everything that Black people benefit from in America, we fought for it in spite of democracy. Whether I'm talking about my ability to be in the classroom, my ability to vote, my ability to get housing, my ability to drink water, all of these things is stuff that democracy is supposed to give me up jump, but we have to fight for it. So in 250 years, we can show that everything you said democracy is supposed to have, we can identify really ain't never had it. For instance, we know that the Greeks, their idea of democracy was a direct democracy. The people directly voted for laws. The framers of America, they believed in mobocracy. They believed that the indigenous people were so stupid and dumb that we have to have a representative democracy. So it shows you how many times in American history has a president won the election and he lost the popular vote. Many a times, showing you that the concept of popular sovereignty is also one that's bankrupt. It's a concept that's very cool and sexy in the abstract, but nothing in the world operates in the abstract. Nothing in the world operates in the abstract. So you think about it in terms of pluralism. In America, every time a group has come up with multicultural pluralism, it is seen as a direct threat to the American government. Whether we're talking about the Black Panther Party and Fred Hampton, whether we're talking about, this hippie group, that hippie group, every time we've had a movement that's trying to substantiate a multicultural movement, it's always seen as a threat to democracy. You feel what I'm saying? Now get here, fair elections, right? Fair elections. I know that the Electoral College historically came about because of slavery and trying to account for the 3/5 of people, right? That is how we get the Electoral College. The Electoral College in America is a cornerstone of democracy. We don't get the Electoral College without thinking about how chattel slavery, the captivity of African people, brought about this tool. Now, you and I in our conversation, we talked about how America has been around for 250 years. And what I told you was that you're going to sound like a domestic violence victim talking about how though they've been getting their butt kicked by their spouse for 250 years, year 251 might be good. So we can have hope. We can have hope that our abuser that showed us they have a relationship of abusing, they can be better. Or come up to me as the Christians that say that about, hey man, anything Christians do should not never be seen as a reflection on Christianity because God and man are two different things. As if our ideas about God don't come from man. As if our ideas of Christianity or ideas of democracy don't come from somebody. So let's go back to the history, right? We know that historically speaking, all of our concepts of democracy come from the Greeks. One has to ask themselves, what is the relationship that America has to the Greeks that make it where they always already think that the values that come from them is best thanks to slice bread? Well, a lot of Western world, a lot of Western Europeans believe they are rightful heirs of the Greeks, or rightful heirs of the Romans. And as a result, they believe that whatever those white folks came up in the Greeks is the limitation of human society when it comes to government. Hey, listen. The Greeks might have been on the world 2,000 years ago. For some reason, though, white folks in America, particularly white men in America, believe that the Greeks were the top level of development, of the highest development of government, and that we can't come up with nothing outside of what they have for us. So we can point out how smart, innovative we are. It don't matter, though. We are only limited to the government ideas that white folks made. That's my beef. We have 250 years of democracy in America that's always been able to justify denying humanity, always been able to justify death, always been able to justify instability or being able to invade a country or being able to slave. How can we say democracy is something that we should be claiming still? I would argue that, to me, the reclamation of democracy, a lot of folks trying to reclaim democracy, and democracy ain't never claimed your ass. A lot of y'all trying to protect democracy ain't never protected you. So I'm still thinking. So in America, we have a representative democracy, meaning that even the abstract idea of democracy, American framers didn't agree with. As a matter of fact, in the abstract, democracy was seen as being able to directly vote for a law. That abstract idea was so fearful to the founding fathers of America, they said, we can't have that. And they came and created complete concepts to demonize it. Mobocracy. You feel me? So let's get into this idea of democracy being able to apply to everybody. I would argue that democracy is based in exclusion. The reason why the Athens and the Greeks wanted to have democracy is because they wanted to expand their empire. We're going to expand our empire by denying humanity to other people, or expand our empire by denying citizenship to other people. Get down, lay down. When they teach us that all roads lead to Rome, I understand that the Greeks and Romans, two different things, but we understand how they tie together in history, right? What I would argue is that everything that comes from these two civilizations, the European descendants of these individuals believe their ancestors had the answers to the world for the next 200,000 years, and that whatever they create, we could always make it better. And even if you can identify, democracy might have justified a little slavery, we can make it better though. Yeah, democracy might have killed a couple of Native Americans, we can make it better though. Every time we point out how democracy is bad, they're gonna be able to talk about, but we can make it better. We can reform it. Or you'll say, like, he might say, your mind made up that you think democracy is bad. I think I would flip it. Your mind made up that democracy is always reformable. Your mind is made up that you believe that this state of government is the best type of government we can have. I believe we're smart enough to come up with a new innovative government economies that's not limited to what's happened in history. And that's a direct response. But
well, I mean, I'm in favor of democracy, not necessarily the status quo. I mean, we don't really have like a pure democracy right now. We have a society that's built on, ethnic cleansing and slavery. We could, that's the elephant in the room about, were we ever really a democracy, or when we have most of our population in prison. I mean, those are all valid points. But I mean, democracy is also, older than the United States. And it's funny how, you mentioned that like white governments, Western governments, the Western governments look to Rome as being, there's a white supremacist mentality that connects Rome to manifest destiny. When, in a certain time period, Greeks and Romans, or, Italians and Greeks weren't even considered white, which is kind of odd, so, but there is a right of conquest mentality that runs through, I think, some circles. But like I said, I don't necessarily think that we should adhere to these old notions of democracy, but rather I think we need a little bit more government involvement, something like democratic socialism or something along those lines. I think would probably be working out a little bit better. But one of the things that you mentioned was about the framers setting up the Electoral College. Now, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, as much as they disagreed, they created the Constitution. Or really, James Madison, he created the Constitution because of the abuses that he sees that occurred on the state level as it pertained to Revolutionary War debt and stuff like that. They viewed the majority of people as country bumpkins. There was this Bernard Balin, the ideological origins of the American Revolution. He's a well-known scholar in that he talks about this idea of court versus country, like the urban elites versus, rural individuals. And the Electoral College, part of it was created to prevent the type of demagoguery that we see in the House and the state level from creating somebody like President Trump. But obviously that failed.
Hey, democracy made President Trump possible, man. To me, Trump was birthed out of democracy. We don't get Trump without democracy. There's no way for me to analyze democracy without viewing how Donald Trump uniquely has been able to use the levers of power within democracy, the values within democracy, in order to be this great, a populist candidate he is now. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, he's supposed to be a conservative. Conservatives conserve the Constitution. That's why they called conservative. I would argue the Constitution from the jump was already bankrupt. That's the reason why I got over 20 amendments. It was so bad they tried to amend that motherfucker over 20 times, and it still ain't giving us the freedom we need. You see what I'm saying? To me, this gets to the transcendental nature that Europeans believe in their products. When a European creates something, they believe that product or that creation has the ability to transcend past limitations, regardless if those limitations are present for 250 years. We can have limitations present for 250 years, but because it came from the Greeks or the Romans, we can always be able to say it can be made better. Now imagine you've been in a domestic violent relationship for 250 years, and you're trying to explain everybody else that this relationship that's been codified for 250 years is going to change in 251. That don't make any sense. To me, too, it's like this, man. I got a lot of homeboys right now waiting on commissary mail and the release date. They waiting on that because the judge told them that because they were in proximity when the law was being committed, they're seen as an accessory to the crime. My argument is that all the inhumane things that America has done, democracy is an accessory to the crime. Whether we're talking about manifest destiny, whether we're talking about enslavement, whether we're talking about goddamn patriarchy, all these things in America is done in the name of democracy. As a matter of fact, I went and did a little research. So we know that manifest destiny is when the Europeans believed it was a God-given right to expand from the Atlantic to the Pacific, right? We know that the relationship between democracy and manifest destiny, though it's complex, we can see that the democratic ideas are often intertwined with expansionist and nationalistic justifications. It's the reason why they spent so much tax dollars and going to invade countries in the name of spreading democracy. Even if you can acknowledge that they weren't really spreading democracy, they really was moving for corporate interests in the name of democracy. They really was looking for profits for oil in the name of democracy. The reason why the global empire or the global community doesn't blink an eye most times because, hey, we going and taking y'all resources in the name of democracy or freedom. Listen, democracy was a justification of expansion. Democracy throughout American history has always been used as a justification of expansion. We know that many leaders from President James K. Polk to President, Madison has always argued that spreading democracy in the Republican government is a moral duty tied to manifest destiny, meaning there's no way to separate the extermination of Native Americans and your abstract idea of democracy. The framers literally tied the two together and said that spreading democracy is a moral duty of manifest destiny. The belief that the United States is a democratic nation had a right and an obligation to expand its political systems. However, it was always done in the idea of displacing the undemocratic backwards regimes, i.e., Native American governments, i.e. Mexican rule of the Southwest. So we see that the democracy is always created in terms of a binary. You see what I'm saying? You can either be democratic or undemocratic. If you're undemocratic, history shows us that the democratic actors will do a bunch of undemocratic things to kill you. So this right here is showing you that democracy is inherently flawed and always has been. If it was, we would know that the Iroquois Confederation of the Native Americans that was in Dakotas, their government would still be intact. It's not, because the Europeans believe with their notion of capitalism, their notion of Christianity, their notion of democracy was the best thing for the world. It's the reason why the white man burden got even structured. You know that. You know, when you bring up the Philippines, the same idea of a democratic expansion in America is the same one that became applicable in the Philippines. So we think about it. Imperialism is a key. Imperialism, a key point of it is democracy. The reason why imperialism is justified morally is because it's supposed to bring democracy. And that's the reason why it's bad. That's the reason why people ask in the comments, so what's the alternative? The alternative is deliberation. The alternative is acknowledging that us as humans, we are not tied to our past, that we have the ability to use the minds that God gave us to create a new system. The same way that these three Greeks did this in 500 BC and 300 BC is the same way in 2025 we can come up with some new shit. It's simple too. It's simple. It's simple. It's like, hey, has this been working? No. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting new results. Reclaiming democracy has done nothing for us. Only allowed for us to boost our egos and thinking that the way our democracy, the way our government runs, is better than everybody else's. As a matter of fact, that's why I know people would be like, well, if you hate democracy so much, imagine if you was in Iran, or imagine if you was in South Korea. It's like, hey, listen, you pointing out there are other countries worse than America does not negate none of the criticisms I have towards America. You pointing out that, hey, I said abuse is bad. You pointing out, but there are other abusers. That don't deal with my argument about this abuser. I don't care about that. I'm dealing with this abuser right here. So everybody watching, my argument is simple. The notion of American democracy is inherently bankrupt, and the notion of claiming it for who? Some of us ain't never claimed democracy. Democracy ain't never claimed us. You say that we have to protect democracy. Protect for who? I would argue that democracy has never protected everybody. It's always been centered around the who. And I don't think it's ironic that the people that will fight and cling to preserve and protect the democracy the most, while acknowledging how bad it's been, it's going to be people like Eric. No disrespect. It's going to be able-bodied, cisgender white men that's thinking about the greatest privileges you've been able to experience. And I'm telling you, like, hey, fam, I got 250 years that shows you how white men being the minority, somehow the white man being the minority, privileges and rights always be preserved regardless of what the majority is. And that right there show you how democracy always been. To end this rant. One of the components you said is that democracy is about majority rule for making sure it never goes over minority rights. Well, I'm going to argue throughout our conversation, not only in America, but every instance of democracy throughout world history has always been around. How can we coalesce the majority at the expense of minorities? How can we create some solidarity at the expense of them right there? That's how you're able to get manifest destiny. Minority rule? Huh? No, minority had the right to genocide all Native Americans, even though they were outnumbered, and then create democracy.
Well, yeah, there's definitely speaks to the right of conquest mentality. Now, I would argue, like when you said like democracy is inherently bad, and is it that it's democracy is bad? Is it not working? Is it flawed because democracy is flawed, or is it flawed because our society doesn't maintain those components? I mean,
I think that those things are not detachable. I think that you can detach the idea of democracy from the country that claims to be a democratic country. See what I'm saying? To me, it's like, is it the application of it or it's the idea of it? It's all together. When it comes to reality or it comes to how things act, we know that ideologies, the material reality, how it's enforced and how it's applied, all that goes together. You feel me? To me, it's like the same thing Christians do. Hey, man, you can't point out and say anything that Christianity is bad because that's what man did, not God. hey man, democracy, it did not come out the sky. It did not come from the ground. It came from a particular social location that was trying to take care of particular social locations.
So do you think that I mean, like, the situation would be the same if we had maintained all those components, if we had an educated society, if we had equal protection of the law, really? Like, do you think that
maybe
you make the same argument?
I mean, maybe, but to me, it's like it's all utopian, George William doublespeak. Being real with you, it's like, to me, it's like ideally, maybe, but to me, it's like in terms of like shit, flesh and life, I don't want to deal with no maybes. I know that the components you gave me ain't never existed. That's what I'm dealing with. Reality. In reality, equal protection in America is a myth. In reality,
Yes.
From 1776 to 2025, we ain't literally. I'm here with you, bro. Damn near every component you said
Has issues.
every component you said has an inconsistency throughout the history of America. Everyone, including loyalty. Think about it. On Saturday, I'm going to my uncle's funeral. My uncle is a military veteran. I have a degree in African American studies. I always think about how when my ancestors went and fought in World War I and World War II for American democracy, how they came back to America and got lynched in the very uniforms they fought democracy against. See what I'm saying? Because the white people believe that the values and rights of democracy was not supposed to be given to them regardless if they fought or not. That's democracy to me. You see what I'm saying? Democracy to me is saying, hey, all people are created equal, except for you niggas and natives over there. That's democracy to me. You see what I'm saying? And even this, if it's another democratic ideal throughout the world, I don't think it's ironic that most of all the countries you're gonna point out are tied strictly to colonialism. Canada's the democratic colonizers, Brazil colonizers, Argentina colonizers, France colonizers. It's like, how is it that all of the nation states that's structured by colonialism have these old abstract romanticized ideas of democracy? Last thing right here, Captain Traore of Burkina Faso, an old colony of France. You feel me? The president of France, like, hey man, I want you to be my friends. You feel me? Can we literally said, can I put a military base in Burkina Faso? Captain Traore respond like, shit, America your friends, Germany your friends. You ain't got to put no military base over there.
Right.
My point of bringing this up is that democracy is always structured in a hierarchy where we literally start to sequence individuals, ideologies, and such, you know what I'm saying, in something locations. In democracy, the white, able-bodied Christian man is always gonna have great ideas, so I should fight for democracy. Everybody else though is gonna be like, yeah. And that's why I think right now it's such a crazy time in American history. Because a lot of white people right now is viewing America how black folks been viewing it. Unfair, fascist, authoritarian. To me, it's like, listen, man. If a black
I'm in danger.
And now you, to me, it's the part that I ain't getting though. Now you in danger, but you still want to fight for the very thing that got your ass in danger, democracy. That's gonna be my argument. It's like democracy is what we fighting. The reason why you worried about this now is because democracy is no longer protecting you the way it was supposed to. The way you've used to. If you're 45 years old, can we agree that the way democracy protects you now is not the way it protected you 20 years ago?
Absolutely.
That's what. So to me, it's like shit. It's time. It's had this. Hey, all the great things in the world. It's all we're gonna get from democracy. It's time to move on. To me, it's even this. Think about it. If this democracy idea came from like 500 BC. What were they doing in 700 BC? What brought about the climate that allowed for these Greeks to come up with a new form of government where they felt like they were not tied to the things that have come through the past? If we want to replicate, copy out the Greeks or anything, is what was their mindset when they were creating the concept of democracy, where they started to believe the shit that happened in the past ain't working back on something new. That's the only part that I care to preserve with the Greeks. That's it. Everything else, throw that shit out the window. Well, the Greeks, their relationship to Africa was through mythology, pathology, and war. This is the relation in trade. These are the four relationships that the Greeks had with Africa. So think about it. If we know that your relationship to this entire continent is through mythology, pathology, trade, and war, how does your ideas of democracy extend to them? It don't, bro. It don't. It literally doesn't. You see what I'm saying? And that's the reason why I know we should. It's time, bro.
Okay.
It's time.
Well, I'll tell you what. Like you argued, like if democracy produces Trump, is that a viable model? I mean, like people drive their car off a cliff. Sometimes we don't necessarily ask ourselves if automobiles per se is the real problem going on there. We want competent drivers behind the wheel so that we can guide it in a new direction. Now, did democracy look the same to me today as it did 25 years ago? No, but we have a lot of corporate and a lot of social engineering that is at play that keeps people from being able to, adhere to some of these components. Like since 2008, I believe that high school dropout rates have gone up to the point where, and I was told this by a very, very prominent historian. He said that there's after 2008 financial crisis, the high school graduation rates have dropped to the point where bachelor degrees are viewed as more like a certificate, and that academic departments are hiring fewer people in the PhD programs, but they're giving them full rides. And so, that's just kind of like just one example of things that are going on in academia that were, entirely happening before they were being attacked, directly with accusations of bias. These are very different kinds.
I think that reality is a reality of a product of democracy and capitalism. I think that once we started to care more about expanding the international empire more than we cared about educating the constituents, that's when we started going down. But to me, I would argue that's a core component of democracy. It's always about expansion. We care more about expansion. That's the reason why we would give $5 billion to Israel, while we say we don't got $1 million to solve hunger here. Because in democracy, it only cares about expanding power. Even think about it. Democracy is defined by power. What type? How should we, extend power and navigate it? Democracy is a tool for that, or democracy is a strategy for that. See what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is that the way it's been done is bad. This is bad. Even this. The metaphor you gave about cars being dropped off the cliff, from a debate standpoint, I'm gonna say that's a bad metaphor because it doesn't account for the difference between subjectivity and objectivity. A car, that's an object that's operating on objectivity. The democracy, that's subjectivity. That's subjective. You see what I'm saying? So the metaphor about cars and shit doesn't apply. Non-responsive. It's non-responsive to none of the things I said. And it's the reason why I feel like you're kind of behind on a few of these components, arguments, because we've already conceded that this shit ain't never happened in 250 years. In 250 years, everything you acknowledge, ain't no line we can draw from 1776 to 2005 to say we got loyalty or deliberation or fairness or popular sovereignty or infrastructure. So it's showing you that democracy ain't working. So to me, the question becomes, if you acknowledge that it has not been working, what are you reclaiming, preserving, and why are you still fighting for it?
And you point to a time in U.S. history where we facilitated all of those components, where we had educated populace, and where we had multiculturalism, and we had pluralism, and we had everybody participating, and we had everybody deliberating, and everybody wondering, how they were going to be affected by legislation.
I cannot, because democracy is ineffective. Democracy has failed to educate all the public. It has failed to get everybody civically engaged. It has failed to make sure we all, that's everything you point out to me is a reason why we should leave. To me, it's like, that flows my way. If I'm Af and you neg, everything you saying right now flows Af. Can you point out a time in American history where all these things happen? No, that's the reason why democracy is failing. It's never worked. To me, you asking that question is illustrating how democracy has never worked, even in the abstract. Because there's nowhere in 250 years that you can identify to me that all 8 of these components was there. I'm agreeing. There's nowhere in American history you can say identify. That is indicative of the inherent violence and failure of democracy. You can't even do the shit you say you're going to do. Democracy can't live up to a standard set for itself, bro. That's how bad democracy is. It has never lived up to the standard it set for itself in 250 years.
So, you said that democracy fails to educate. Democracy is not supposed to educate. Democracy is just a tool for us to choose.
Hey. So hold on. I wrote this down right here. For sure. This is what you said. For sure. You said that democracy has the responsibility of educating the public. That's what you said. I wrote it down for sure. I wrote it down. Go back. That's what you said.
That's not what I said. I said that democracy requires a media infrastructure, just like what you're doing, helping the citizens to educate in the maintenance of the democracy.
You made an argument about democracy and education and how democracy is supposed to bring an educated, majority. That's what you talked about. Literally what you said.
I don't ascribe any motivation to democracy, like we talked about. Democracy has,
so hold on. So loyalty.
Yeah,
value finish. Like, wait, what?
So democracy is not, a conscious entity. It's a tool. Okay, we don't ascribe agency to our hammer, right? We can't ascribe agency to democracy. Democracy is a tool, and people use that tool. Okay, and education happens at the state level. Okay, and it's through, you can't say democracy fails to educate. Democracy is just there to help us choose our leaders. Okay, and it's up to me to already be educated so that I can make an informed decision. And it's up to the infrastructure that I mentioned that is the government infrastructure is supposed to provide us with this education. The media is supposed to educate us. Okay, I can't say that democracy has any kind of a value like morals and values. It's just that it's a tool, and I think it's kind of problematic, logically, to argue that democracy has agency and that it's therefore evil and built on certain things when it's just a tool. You see what I'm saying?
No, bro. I don't think being intellectually honest. Democracy is supposed to be an ideology that ensures that people don't have their agency taken away. That's hold on. You literally had a component about majority rule, minority rights, showing you democracy is always about trying to preserve autonomy. That's the whole reason of why the reason why the Greeks came up with democracy was to what? Destabilize the power of the aristocrats. So even you don't believe what you just said because it's false. It's false. No. You make this. Even though I already told you, your metaphor is trying to compare objects to subjects. That's it's not responsive. Your idea of a hammer and correlating it to democracy, not only is it intellectually bankrupt, it's not being honest. You know that democracy is an ideology. A hammer is not. A car is not an ideology. Maybe there are ideologies that create the car, but it's not an ideology. Democracy is an ideology that's supposed to ensure the autonomy of individuals that is governing. Literally, like the whole idea of the consent of the governed is a democrat idea, bro. So the fact you're right now being intellectually dishonest and saying that it's not like, fam. Ideologies are built by consciousness. Ideologies are structured around power and domination. Democracy is an ideology. That's the reason why the founding fathers used democracy as a way to push manifest destiny, because the consciousness around expansion, entitlement. So I don't think you're being real right now. If we got 700 people in this live stream, what you just said, bro, was not real, fam. It's like it's not being intellectually honest, or you're saying it deliberately out of bad faith.
Oh, well, I'm definitely proceeding.
You saying being real.
I'm definitely proceeding in good faith. And
hold on. If you said at the beginning of this live stream, you said that democracy is supposed to ensure majority rule, but not over minority rights, and then you backed it up and said it has no conscience. It ain't got nothing to do with autonomy. It sounds like at the beginning you were saying that democracy is supposed to always ensure the autonomy of the minority is there, even if nothing else. And now you're saying it doesn't matter anymore. Which one is it? Is minority rights a part of democracy, or it's not?
What I said about the ethic of reciprocity is that when you have minorities, or you have power that changes hands, the minority becomes the majority becomes the minority again, like Republicans and Democrats. It is the obligation of the majority who occupies power in the moment to protect the rights of the minority. And then when the minority becomes powerful, it's the new minority, the old majority, they have to let the new majority govern. Does that make it more sense?
I think it makes sense. I just disagree on the functionality of it, or it's a link turn and saying I agree with what you said, but I think that it concludes the other way around. I think it's the reason why democracy is failing us now is because that majority rule has never gave up majority rule.
Right. Sure, that's true.
Think that if you identify some minority rights in this country, I can never go to anywhere in 250 years to show you that it was ruling. Never. The minorities in 1776 continue to be the minorities in 2025. Just as facts. You see what I'm saying? So to me, it's still like, hey, this sound like George Orwell doublespeak. Freedom for slavery, slavery for freedom. Democracy for voting, but you can't vote. We're going to have peace with war. That's democracy, fam. Democracy is doublespeak. Inherently doublespeak. Inherent. It's the reason why Native Americans to this day doesn't have political power. Think about it. Equal protection for everybody. Everybody creating equal except for its first inhabitants. And in 250 years, you haven't been able to acknowledge the humanity of the original inhabitants. We have all these romanticized ideas, though, of freedom and fairness, but you ain't never extended that to the first inhabitants. Bankrupt. Literally, this is illustrating historically, not abstract, not what should be, what could be, what is happening, what has happened. What has happened? Oppression, white supremacy, anti-blackness, enslavement, genocide, colonialism. This is history of America. As a matter of fact, the concept of democracy doesn't get to America without enslavement and genocide. American democracy is birthed through Native American genocide and African enslavement. We don't have this concept without it. So if I can acknowledge that this concept is birthed out of bad shit, how are we able to say that we can make it better? It's made possible through bad shit. There's no way to keep it functioning but by keeping the bad shit. That's the reason why we got to invade countries. Last thing I say, now I know I'm somebody here with you on the spine, man. What I know in terms of history, America has been around for 250 years, and for 250 years it has been waging war at some corner of the world for its entire existence. That's democracy.
Well, I mean, I would argue that democracy, like I said, is just, defined academically by, choosing your own leaders and such that we talked about.
But you don't know, like we never have though.
Because, the problems that are going on in the United States, they didn't really have the same issues in Athens back then. And so there's a lot of forces at work that complicate things. That doesn't mean that.
Whoa. Back. Rewind. Greek and Athens did have this problem. It didn't exist with the thought leaders, the white men that was doing this thought, bro. Like Athens had many flaws. That's the reason why its relationship to Africa was through pathology, mythology, war, and trade. You see what I'm saying? Democracy has always had these problems with it. It's the reason why they had to get rid of Socrates. Socrates was teaching too much. Through his teaching, he was starting to persuade individuals, right? And then through his persuasion, he was starting to make people in power fear him. Because they didn't want him to be able to affect politics or laws because they wanted to keep the way it was going. So it's showing you, even when democracy was first created, it's always been a tool for the people of the aristocrats to make sure they ensure their power. To me, it's just manufactured consent. Democracy is manufactured consent. Manufactured consent of the governed. It's literally the reason I'm talking about is that like literally Socrates was demonized because of how he was teaching. The same way democracy always says that the Black Panthers is a threat because of what they do with the kids. If you start teaching kids and you teaching kids the contrary of America, you a threat. You're a threat. Even if you believe educating youth is good, you better not be educating them in a way to question democracy, to question capitalism. That's why they defund education right now. They defund education right now because Trump and them believe that American education, taxpayers' dollars, was starting to be used to question America. That sounds very communist and dictator-like to me. That don't sound very democratic. Trump literally said, "Hey, if you don't agree with my Trump literally took it right now. If your curriculum does not align with Trump's administration, you would not get funding."
That's not democracy.
What is democracy? To me, it's like all the things you've written down, it's never existed. So to me, it's obviously pointing at either A, democracy has never existed, or B, it's always existed with its inherent flaws. Because you identified, you even asked me, where in American history can you identify where all these 7 components existed? We both say none. We both say it never existed.
Right.
So the question becomes,
democracy
what is democracy then? To me, it's like, what is democracy? It's like if you gave me a criteria while acknowledging that criteria has never been present. So is it a utopian idea? Is it like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny? Is it like, you feel me, mythology and we supposed to believe in it, but it's very tall tale like? Or is it in reality, can we get fairness? Can we get popular sovereignty? Can we get humanity? Can we get infrastructure? Everybody get infrastructure. The reason why DEI is a thing is because a lot of minorities believe not only was we not getting infrastructure, we weren't getting access to infrastructure. And that's why we have DEI. So literally everything we have in America literally is something that's trying to make up for a limitation of democracy. Every instance.
I agree.
Over 20 amendments. We got over 20 amendments. You know what amendment is. Amendment, we trying to make it better. We trying to change it. Over 20 of them. Because it was literally made by flaw, bro. It's like, to me, it's like America did a good job in making us believe that the white colonizers, slave masters that create this country is the best intellectuals that we have. And whatever they said is what we limited to. That's what America good at. America was great at teaching us. Even though these individuals had flawed morals and flawed ethics, we should still believe what they say about government. That to me, that is like so like it is divorcing yourself from logic and ethics for us to be able to say the founding fathers fucked up in every one of these instances, but what they said about democracy, we should hold on to. We tried to amend every other thing they've done, literally. But maybe we should hold on to the Constitution because we should throw that Constitution. That bitch been thrown out. That Constitution been thrown out from the jump. It's only applied to particular demographics throughout American history. That's the reason why and I know those components has never been. You don't see them. We don't see them because democracy was only applied to the white men that own land. And 250 years later, we're still trying to make sure the Constitution accounts for more than just white men with land. That's how we got here. That's how we got here. We got here through Trump getting a little $1 million loan from his daddy to go buy up some land in New York. And that's what gave him the political capital. He got political capital through land. Democracy is all about land expansion, land conquer. You feel me? That's what we had, bro. That's what all this shit is. To me, it's simple to me. It's like, hey, has democracy lived up to what its standard is set in 250 years? Simple response, no.
So you just advocated that we should just throw the Constitution away, right?
Hell yeah. What? Listen, it doesn't exist. All right. To me, it's like, think about it. The Constitution is supposed to have separation of power, checks and balances, popular sovereignty. I ain't even got to go far. In 2024, 2025, those 3 things, separation of power, checks and balances, popular sovereignty, is called into question. So when you say the Constitution, to me, it's like the Constitution didn't exist when we was kicking out Chinese. The Constitution didn't exist when we was enslaving black folks. Constitution don't exist when we sending money over there to bomb. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, all these things is unconstitutional or against international law. It's against international law to give money to a company that's doing terrorism.
Right.
The Constitution says against the law. It don't matter. The Constitution says against the law to punish somebody in a way that's unjust. You know, harsh and unusual punishment is supposed to be unconstitutional. That's the black experience. Harsh and unusual punishment. So when you ask, are you advocating for the Constitution to be thrown out? For a lot of us, it's never really extended that way. We've been fighting for it. I might fight. Black folks might fight for the Constitution, but it don't extend to us. That's what we got to fight for. That's the reason I got them amendments. So to be clear, it's not that I'm saying, you feel me, that the Constitution was working, got to throw it out. I'm saying that bitch never worked. I'm saying it's always working folks at the top that's able to dictate the narratives. Let's go ask a Native American, has the Constitution worked for them? Let's go ask them. Let's go find any tribe in America and ask them, hey, my Choctaw, hey, my Seminole, hey, my Cherokee, what has the Constitution did for you? And what you're going to say is that what the Constitution did for you outweighs how the Constitution fucked them up. That's literally what the Europeans call the utilitarian approach. What's greatest good? And guess what? It doesn't account for the people that's not seen as human. So if Native Americans outnumber European settlers, shit, 1,000 to 1, they ain't human. Utilitarian approach, democracy, westward expansion. This democracy, bro. Democracy is being able to offer Mexico $20 million for California. Mexico say no. Goddamn, the president marched some military people to the literal border of Mexico, Texas, hoping to embolden their attack. They attack and you steal it. That's democracy. Democracy is we having standards for how the law should operate, and then Thomas Jefferson being able to do something unconstitutional by doubling the size of America in land. And though it broke the Constitution, Louisiana is still a part of America, ain't it? Mm-hmm. And Missouri is still a part of, you see what I'm saying? It's always been bankrupt, bro. To me, it's like it's always been George Orwell doublespeak. The Constitution applies to folks want it to apply, and it don't apply, folks don't want it to apply. Separation of church and power, church and state. But Israel got to exist because we got to make sure. Come on, man. This shit is just simple. You see what I'm saying? Hey, it's like Liberia, settler colony, Israel, settler colony, America, settler colony, New Zealand, settler colony, Australia, settler colony. All these settler colonies, is ironically, are the adjudicators of democracy.
I mean, well, you know, I don't believe the same way that you describe other people believe in democracy. I want everybody to have the same shot. I want everybody to have a fair shake.
I do too. I agree with you. I want everybody to be able to have access to opportunity, to resources. You feel me? To access. I want everybody to be able to have humanity. I'm just arguing that democracy is not the way to do it. It has not been for the past 250 years. We've been hoping it. It ain't gave it to us though.
We got to take it. You know, we got to take it.
I don't know what that means. As somebody that comes back radical tradition, talking about shout out to Malcolm X, to Fannie Lou Hamer, to Huey P. Newton. When you say take it, you know that the COINTELPRO was created for that. The counterintelligence program. That's democracy, bro. Democracy is black folks trying to fight for equal representation, for housing, and getting jailed and getting killed. That's democracy. So when you say go take it, you recognize that everybody trying to take it has different consequences. That's the reason I live in Texas. Every time I see one of them white rednecks with the American flag and that yellow flag, they say, come take it. I always think like, God damn, you would justify the murdering of a black person for not conforming to the law, but you being boastful. If you change the law about my guns, come and take it. But black people, you better conform to the law. You should be killed. This democracy, bro. I know it's never been protection under the law. That's the reason why a black person in 2025 is not gonna ask the police, why you pulling me over? What's going on with this? You might do that though. Ain't no equal protection under the law. This not, you see what I'm saying? This ain't that, bro. Like to me, the romanticized idea of America is starting to crumble before our eyes. And to me, what I believe is that the rest of America is starting to view America how a lot of minorities been viewing it from the jump. Bankrupt. Welcome to the club.
And that's why I hope that we can do something about it before it's too late. That
to me,
we can take the power back.
Democracy stifles hope. Democracy limits hope. Democracy says who can be hopeful and who can be hopeless. Democracy tells people who is lawful and who's lawless. Democracy is the issue. Democracy is what has allowed for this world to become what it is. The reason why America has literal military bases throughout the world is in the name of protecting democracy. What president said America got to be the police of the world? Was it, which president was it? Truman? Was it Truman that said that? The Iron Curtain and shit? Man, this is democracy, bro. This is democracy. Democracy is white men being able to say, I'm the way, the truth, and the light, and politically, socially, economically, if I want to go this way, it go that way. If I say this ensures stability and peace, who are you to say no? If you say no, I'm gonna bring my military in there. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have the other whites too. You feel me? I'm gonna have my other whites from England, my whites from France. We finna come in and take this shit. You know what NATO is? NATO, the North Atlantic Trade Agreement, that's a European kinship. A European kinship for Europeans to keep their colonial power throughout the world, even though It's supposed to be gone. That's what NATO is. That's the reason why Trump can say we want to keep the immigrants out. But if the white South Africans going through something, they can come in. Yep. This is democracy to me, bro. Like, this democracy. Immigration bad. But I start talking about slavery, white folks be quick to talk about, man, my parents are only slaves. We migrated in the 1800s from Germany. At the same time, talking about immigration being bad. So when your ancestors immigrating, it's good. When they asylum seekers, it's good. That's what they was doing. They was seeking asylum. But don't be from goddamn Mexico or, you feel me, from Belize trying to asylum seek. You gone. That's democracy, bro. Democracy is centered around exclusion and inclusion. Who can be included? Who can be excluded? We see through the trends and history of democracy what demographics is more likely to be excluded from the democratic process. This is just we gotta like this ain't my feelings. It's fact. It's history. It's history. We can see that democracy has always been justified in exclusion.
We also have large percentages of the population that don't participate, in that process.
Because democracy disincentivizes them with education. There are other countries that make it where the election is a national holiday. It incentivizes civic engagement.
Right.
Because the founding fathers in America really believed that certain individuals that's too stupid to vote, they never, ever thought the idea of educating everybody because they thought everybody wasn't worthy of being educated. I got a You said what?
I don't know. I'd go so far as to say that the founding fathers didn't believe in educating, because that's part and parcel of the package of ideas that came out of the Enlightenment. They were very big on education.
Yeah, education for who? Education for the aristocrats. Harvard was not accessible to everybody. As a matter of fact, you could have been a poor white person living in Boston and you didn't have access to get the education. The reason why we had the Homeland Grant Act is to make it where everyday Americans now have access to higher education. The founding fathers who did the Constitution did not believe that everybody was worthy of being educated. The reason why we had state education, University of Oklahoma, University of Texas, all these state institutions it came after an amendment, basically. What you mean? Like all the state institutions, these are proverbial amendments, man. Thomas Jefferson, that he wanted to be seen as the father of education, he didn't believe in educating everybody. He didn't want Sally Hemings to be educated. He didn't want those. Come on, let's talk plain. Let's talk real talk, bro. Like, come on, man. They ain't do that, bro. They ain't care about that. They ain't care about that at all. Like, they didn't care about that. Like, just be real. They didn't. Like, they didn't. They didn't. Bro. Just be real. Let's be real. They didn't. They just didn't. It just never happened. So now we got people throughout the world. I mean, people throughout the Americas from K through 12 being taught these romanticized idea about democracy that forces us to look at democracy through a neutral, objective lens. Democracy has never been neutral, objective. Democracy has never been neutral, objective, going all the way back to its origins in Greece. It's never been. So now I'm just trying to think about it in 2025, thousands of years later, how we still have these archaic, romanticized ideas of democracy where it's giving us a reality, or it's telling us and giving us a reality it's never been able to promise on. Sound like an abuser telling a girl or telling a spouse, I'm not going to beat you no more, and continue to beat you. And all you say is, listen, man, I can get a new partner, but there's components of this partner that's good. They could be better. They could be better. Yes, they have shown me a history of abuse, but I believe they can change.
Don't you think it's kind of beginning with a predefined term of democracy? When you proceed like that,
I defined it.
Like you're intentionally using the American example when there are other examples. And
use another example. You can use whatever. Athens. I'm like Athens democracy was so bad that it related to an entire continent through mythology and pathology. That's how democracy is, bro.
I would like to see that where you get that, because that's interesting, and I've never heard that. I'm not calling you out on your sources. I'm just saying that's an interesting take on it. I haven't studied ancient Athens. I'm not like a classicist. That's out of my field. But while you're looking that up, the fact that the Constitution has amendments doesn't necessarily mean that their idea was bad. I mean, It's a, the document evolves. It's a living document, and it's designed to take into consideration new ideas and things that aren't prevalent in that society. Like for instance, like the role of AI in developing a surveillance state. And so we gotta come up with a solution for that.
Yeah, I got three of them real fast. Three books. For people in the comment section that's watching this that want to learn more about the intersection of ancient Africa with ancient Greece. First book, Black Athena, The Afro-Asiatic Roots of Classical Civilization by Martin Brunel. Africa in the Mediterranean on Afro-Turks and Black Greeks. That is a book by VYK. The Gratio Africana, Studies of the History of Greek Relations in Egypt and Nubia. That's by Stanley Mayer Burston. Through these three articles, or those 4 books I just gave you, is going to contextualize the various pathological, mythological ways that the Greeks related to Africa.
Thank you.
It's the reason why we get to the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment period is defined in opposition to the dark people. That's the reason why Immanuel Kant. That's the reason why what's the
Descartes, Voltaire, Montesquieu.
all them. All of them. That's the reason why all of them had a human hierarchy that believed the closer you were to the equator, the less developed you was, and that's the reason why the white man burden was to bring them democracy. We gotta help y'all get out of your primitive state. See, we the Romans. You see what I'm saying? God put us in control. That's the reason why Christianity came from around this where we at, because we got to do that. So we finna come bring it to y'all. We're gonna give you the Bible. We're gonna give you democracy. You're gonna take it. Literally, like the reason why the rightful heirs of the Greeks and the Romans believe they can colonize the world is because that's what they believed. Like in your book, the book you showed me, it's almost guaranteed. If I want to be petty, I can go through your book and show you that there's a direct delineation between expansion and democracy. And all I'm saying is that expansion structured by violence. The question is who the violence is going to, but we know that the Greeks cared very much about expansion. That's the reason why we know so much about them. And it's just like that idea of expansion. That's the reason why Christopher Columbus accidentally stumbled across the Americas, because he was trying to expand. So we see the idea of expansion has always been something that has been very natural to how we think about democracy. That's the reason why the founding fathers wanted to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific. That's the reason why the founding fathers want to take it to the Philippines, because they believe that their form of democracy is what's going to free humanity.
Or the proximity to Chinese markets.
They believe that democracy was a great way to fight against those Chinese markets. Matter of fact, think about it. Most of the time, democracy being used is really trying to make sure the resources is held for Western powers, not nobody else. So if we invade Iraq for oil, we believe that oil should be under the power and control of democracy, not socialism or communism.
I mean, like what people do in the name of democracy is often to sell that to us so that we don't get upset and protest, just like after the Vietnam War. We go into places like that for resources that's completely it's not a product of democracy. It's more of a product of capitalism. When we look at the whole history of last 80 years since World War II, then it's not so much about us spreading democracy as much as it is about padding the world for various capital interests. It's about me coming over here and mucking with your society so that it destabilizes your society so I can put my products in there. It's about an oligarchy, which I think is something that needs to be discussed as well. At the end of the day, though, I mean, like where I'm coming from, this conversation would be totally different 10 years ago. But right now, we have forces that are not in favor of democracy. They're not in favor of any of these components, and they're playing for keeps. It is a conservative counter-revolution that we are witnessing in this country right now that is going to change things going forward. That I think want to take us back to the 1740s instead of moving it forward. That's something else we could talk about. But is democracy inherently evil? I don't necessarily believe so. I think that, and I get what you mean about like people arguing about like are Christian scriptures or men the problem? But I don't want to really go there. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, like, it's very hard for me to come to a place where I don't want to fight and activate and write in a way that can bring people together, in a way that can see that everybody has their rights. Because fundamentally, if democracy is flawed, I still believe that everybody should have a fair share. And like I said, at the end of the day, you and I are after the same thing. We all want freedom, and we all want equality, and we want a better society to live in for our children. And we don't want to have our autonomy infringed upon for someone else's interests and for someone else's power grabs. And we want to have, a world that we can pass down to our children that is better than the world that we live in. And I'm willing to argue that in this moment where we are in, we are in a national emergency. We are in a 9/11 style national emergency when it comes to what's going on in our government right now, the deportations and things like that. And from my perspective, if I see, like, there's a lot of anti-democratic propaganda out there, like democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. No, I think democracy is like millions of sheep deciding that they're not going to be dinner anymore, and that we're not going to take this crap anymore. And I feel that deep in my heart. And I feel that just as strongly. I want everybody to have a fair shot. And I don't want to see any of these flaws in a democracy continue to flourish because of a lack of our maintenance of democracy, because of our lack of our media that educates, because our lack of education, and because of our lack and the intrusion of money and foreign money into our process that distorts what Americans think democracy is. You and I can think about democracy on all these different kinds of levels, but like the average person out there sees democracy and they think these things, and they see, that everything is broken. Like the collapse of Weimar was because you had different generations of people that were looking at and seeing these giant cracks in democracy. Okay. And there's a lot of things that we could have learned from that, a lot of things that we could have used, like paying more attention to all of these labor fraternal organizations that were going on, the Freikorps and everything like that, which is something we could talk about as far as a democratic solution. Fraternal organizations, mutual aid societies. I think this is the way that we move forward in this democracy that we have. And I kind of think, like, with the threats that we're facing from fascism, the return to fascism as the World War II generation dies off, that's a bad omen for me. And if I thought about that bad omen existing without there being a strong democratic resistance, then I would feel like the nation that we have no longer exists. You know what I'm saying? And I would like to have a place where there are more minority voices elevated, and there are more people that are benefiting from all the privileges of living in the greatest country in the world. We should have all of these things. But right now, should we be quabbling about the merits of democracy, or should we be out there in the streets demanding equal protection of the law? And I say it's the latter. I say we have to demand it. And I say we have to take it back. We have to take it. We have to go out there and march. And we have to have, I took a history of democracy course in graduate school, followed by a history of religion. Not religion, but revolutions. Mm-hmm. And so it's like one course told us how far we've fallen, and the other course told us how I don't even really think that we can, reclaim it. I don't think that there is a democracy to reclaim, but the problem is having conversations like this. We have such a short time frame. We're trying to solve all these problems. We're trying to put our heads together. And it's like we want to say everything. And these are difficult arguments to articulate. Trying to simplify them so that people can consume them, and trying to find merit and ideologies. I don't know. I just wish we were in a better place right now, and that we were having this conversation from a little bit more comfortable zeitgeist.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. My bad.
There's one more thing I wanted to mention, because in your last video you talked about patriotism, and I think that in this country there is a conflation of patriotism and this virulent nationalism, and nationalism is not patriotism. But I tell you, then when we annexed the Philippines, when we went to war with Spain, we found ourselves in a position where we got Puerto Rico and Guam and Cuba, and we purchased the Philippines for $20 million. And there was a debate about to do that, the annexation debates. Republicans used paternalistic racism, said that Filipinos were savages who couldn't, self-govern, and they needed to have democratic instruction and manifest destiny and the white man's burden. Rudyard Kipling is writing about the Philippines. But the other Democrats used actual racism, actual harmful and malintended racism to argue, well, if we go and there's 7 to 9 million Filipinos, if we make Philippines a state, then they're going to come here and they're going to sully our already complicated racial landscape. Right? But there was another debate that happened that was outside of the Filipino nationalist movement, and that was in the African American presses. And I want to point to this book right here, because this is what I found it on an accident. This is George P. Marks III, The Black Press Views American Imperialism, 1898 to 1900. It's a fantastic work. He argues, that the African Americans are divided. And he said, there was a lot of folks that thought, well, is this what we want to go fight for? Well, we see how white folks have treated non-whites for this entire time. Is this what we want to go and do over here? But the other side said, you know what, like you mentioned, they proved they had to prove that the African Americans were viable citizens, capable of representing American values, capable and willing to fight. You know what I'm saying? And they went over there and they did. And they had problems, but nobody at that time period, because they would say what they would about loyalty and such. Nobody would say that those individuals weren't patriotic. And so I think patriotism is something that is also worthwhile, because, like I said, if we had right now, you argue that democracy has never done any of these things, but we are also having a conversation that can be broadcast all around the world. We can buy shortwave radio and we can transmit our ideas all around the world. We can buy radio stations. We can own networks. We can do anything like that. And I don't believe we could do that in another system. Now, that doesn't mean that democracy is the best system that we can come up with. But I think, given the circumstances that we're in, I think this is the only thing that we can do. We either have a viable and strong democratic response that gets in the streets, and Americans have to make sacrifices for it. You know what I'm saying? Like you were talking about, people are going to get clocked on the head. But do you want to live in a country where you lose your platform? Do you want to live in a country where you're even more at risk just for having a cogent thought? Or do you want to live in a country, where we can at least pay lip service to it? I think like I watched Roland Martin, and I think there's like a lot of loyalty to the Democratic Party. And Roland Martin, and granted, I don't think it's appropriate for me to opine or to talk about African American history in certain contexts. Roland Martin said, the Democratic Party is the only party that even pays lip service to Black issues. And so why would we not want to go with the Democratic Party? Well, the Democratic Party, operates to stymie reform movements. Okay, and that's a problem with our political parties. I don't necessarily think it's a problem with democracy. And I would like to see other things that came out of the ancient world. I know that the ancient Chinese, in and around about the same time period, a couple thousand years ago, they had laws that governed the rights of babies. So like if you killed a pregnant woman, you would also be charged with killing a human being if she was pregnant, two people. And so there are examples from the ancient world that I think are worthy to take a look at. But like when we have rampant, white supremacist ideology that is taking over a government, it's part of a social engineering endeavor that seeks to reproduce and reproduce indefinitely. And if we have to have some sort of a resistance to that, or else we're cooked, as my son says, we're cooked. So that's how I feel about it. And I love this conversation, and I love to debate about stuff like this, and And I tell you, I've come away from this already rethinking some of my positions. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why that we do that in an open society. We can deliberate whether or not democracy is worthwhile. And I think that we get that in because
Yeah.
you certainly can't criticize the government in some places without being shot.
Definitely. I just think that too many times in the past has us as Americans, I feel like, become intellectually lazy when we believe that we can do away with the criticisms of our country by pointing out that another country is bad or worse. And that's when our conversation I was having before we got on live stream. To me, it's like being like, hey, I'm getting abused, and you tell me, well, they abuse worse. It's like, hey, that's fine, that's cool, but I don't want to be abused. So to me, it's thinking about all the ways that we can deliberate, the ways that we can criticize the government, and how we can think about not viewing those components as something that is monopolized by democracy or monopolized by the American government. A lot of times us in America, we start talking about freedom to criticize as if it is monopolized by the American government. We start talking about the ability to have a speaking platform as if it's monopolized by the American government. To me, this is a notion of democracy that is creates a binary, all or nothing, us or else. And I think that is something that we should move away from. I think that when we start talking about how intertwined democracy and capitalism is, we can also acknowledge that they reinforce each other while also always creating a tension. The same way that Democrats and Republicans, they are very distinct, but they feed off of each other, even historical tensions. Likewise, I think that we should be able to deal with how democracy, capitalism, Christianity, how though they are very distinct, they are detachable. They cannot be detached. They are always already literally intimately tied together. And the only argument I'm making is that every humanitarian violation that America has created has been through the name of democracy and made possible through the name of democracy. I'm not saying government is bad. I'm saying that we need a new form of government. I'm not saying that because historically there are other examples that we can have a government, we should go to those. I believe that in 2025, we're 3,000, 4,000 years removed from being able to create a new, different model of government. The Greeks never envisioned to have this much diversity, never envisioned having this much, you know what I'm saying, a territorial values to account for. So their notions of democracy is not going to be able to account for how we want to govern ourselves. Now, I know, you know what I'm saying, my opponent, Eric, and switched it up a little bit. At first, he was saying that democracy is about minority right over majority rules, you feel me? And then start saying that democracy ain't a consciousness. It ain't got no way they're gonna bring us something. It's whatever you make it. This is the contradiction of democracy. It's a contradiction that's always been present. Everybody equal. Hey, you are ordained by your creator to have these unalienable rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, except for if you're a white man without land. Except if you are a woman. Except if you're Chinese. These are the embedded contradictions that is being in the America since the beginning of America.
We changed it.
There's no way to detach America from patriotism. Me and him agree. I would say patriotism is nationalism. Patriotism is the romanticized way of America being able to say we can engage in nationalism without doing what those folks over there did. Maybe you say Nazi nationalism or this nationalism. It doesn't change, however. Patriotism is a nationalistic ideology that allows for us to exclude Native Americans, that allows for us to now, to me, patriotism is how Donald Trump has been able to get so many individuals to buy into mass deportation. Patriotism is structured around an insider and an outsider. Matter of fact, nationalism is structured by inside, outside. Who should be included in a nation? Who should be excluded from the nation? And what we know is that on the lines of race, class, gender, ability, sexuality, that America for 250 years has practiced a very consistent exclusion on these ideas: race, class, gender, ability, sexuality. Even this, in America, democracy of freedom, freedom of religion, we ain't never had no Muslim president. As a matter of fact, in America, we usually view terrorism and Islam as being tied together, showing you that it's always been a contradiction of freedom of religion. Hey, the first 10 amendments, know why we got them, right? The Constitution. The Constitution. I'm a former English teacher. I used to be a 9th and 10th grade English teacher. where there were students that were sent to me to learn grammar and you feel me, learn linguistics. And to me, that's important because the way in which the democracy teaches, it doesn't ensure that we have that. When people talk about America having a 6th grade reading level, that is because the individuals empowered don't want us to feel empowered to get involved. It's a reason why the founding fathers used the terminology of mobocracy. It was never intended for everybody to participate. In fact, they found ways to discourage all participation. So we can send, I think we sent like $30 billion to Israel over the past couple of years. 30 billion.
Since 91, it's been trillions probably.
Think about it. Think about it. Democracy is so flawed that it cares more about investing in international expansion than it cares about the humanity of its own constituents.
I think it's capitalism. That's a good description of capitalism.
I am arguing again. American capitalism is inextricably tied to democracy. There is no way for you to separate democracy from capitalism. As a matter of fact, during McCarthyism, during the Red Scare, when we used the CIA to go destabilize a whole bunch of South American countries, we are doing it with democracy to fight against communism because we believe capitalism is the way. You are being intellectually dishonest. If every time I make a claim about democracy, you want to make a distinction between capitalism, as if these two things are not tied together. Every country in South America that we went to go invade, we invaded because we believed the Russians should not be able to push communism and socialism over here. So we gave them democracy. Ain't no way around this, folks. Iraq, Afghanistan. When we invaded those countries, we invaded them because we believe the capitalistic corporations are better to move democracy than the communist and socialist ones. There is no, even the Philippines. In the Philippines, they were worried about communism and socialism impacting the Philippines. So we got them democracy to ensure they are what? Capitalistic. So there's no, throughout history of capitalism, the European ideas of democracy has always been tied to them, bro. But they have never expanded to everybody. It's true. It's just true. This is what the person right here say. Rivaro, this right here. This right here. Shout out to people in Brazil, my South American people. I see them Maroon Society. I already know we're getting into. Rojava, the Zapatistas, Maroon Societies are dope. National capitalism is blood, bond, and debt. Nationalism really came from the ideology during the 1850s colonial. Hey, I would say nationalism predates 1850s. Feel me? Nationalism nationalism is a very old idea. You know what I'm saying? This is where I think, you know what I'm saying, Eric is right about some things right here. It's like nationalism has different variations. And we know that German nationalism ain't the same as, you know, American nationalism, but we know that the core of it is being able to deny indigeneity and being able to create inclusion and exclusion. Both of them are different. But at the core, the impact, inclusion, exclusion, whose identity matches with the national identity, and if you don't, get out of here. Hitler believed Hitler was democratic. Trump is democratic. Hey, listen.
One thing. When you say that
he's a dictator, but he didn't believe he was a dictator. He believed he was democratic. He believed that he was doing the greatest good for the greatest, most common of the people of Germany at the expense of Jewish people and Africans. He didn't care about that. He believed he was acting democratically in good intention. Donald Trump right now, he might say he's democratic, he might say he dictator, but he believes everything he's doing is for the greatest common good for everybody. That's important. It's important to acknowledge. I don't think that he's purposely being evil. I genuinely believe that Donald Trump is doing this because he thinks it's good for the world. That matters.
I can't speak to his motivation, but you know, when you said that democracy can't be disentangled from capitalism, I mean, like China has a kind of an interesting capitalist economy, believe it or not, that is almost more capitalist than ours in a more pure form, and they're not a democratic country. I don't think anybody would argue that. I mean, like
I would definitely. I think that's one of, like, when I was talking about epistemologies. Western epistemology loves to pathologize non-Western shit. So you can acknowledge that within China, they are operating in the global economy of capitalism.
Domestically, too.
Obviously, domestically is how they able to, you see what I'm saying? But to me, it's like, hey, ain't no way to play this game without playing the game. Ain't no way of playing this game without playing the game. They hold elections in China.
I mean, we're not talking about democracy. I'm not arguing that China is a democracy.
I don't think it is either. I don't think China is a democracy. My argument and point is that it thinks it is.
Well, okay, so I mean, that's what a lot of people can say about our democracy. You know, it's like
that's what I'm saying. Literally, that's what I'm saying. Be clear. That's what I'm saying. What people say, I'm saying that. I'm actually saying that. I'm saying that this democracy is fucked. See what I'm saying? Yes, there's only one party in China. It's only one party in American corporations. Hey, the Democrats and Republicans don't agree on nothing but being loyal to their corporate donors and making sure Israel is able to terrorize Middle East. These are the only two things the Democrats and Republicans agree on. They agree on westward expansion, expanding the military. They agree on making sure Israel has all the money to be able to fuck over everybody. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes distinctions, it matter until it don't.
Well, I mean, if you say the distinctions matter until it doesn't, I mean, if somebody does something clearly like invading the Philippines under the guise of democracy, when the idea is really about capitalism and about access to China's markets, then, I mean, we have to have a discussion. That's not necessarily democracy. It's just what they have said. You see what I'm saying? And so it's kind of like, I mean, like your arguments are kind of like almost like they're in there in a lot of different areas, but it's like it seems like it's just like it's kind of hard to parse logically. You know, it's like you say that democracy produced Trump. Well, I mean, there are criticisms of democracy, like having the day off to go, making election day a national holiday. But what people argue is that more democracy doesn't result in better democracy. Because if you have more people voting, but they don't have the education to know the ramifications of their policies, then the problem is not democracy. It's the guy behind the car who doesn't know how to operate the vehicle.
Hey, man, to the 995 people on this live stream, democracy is so bad and bankrupt, he acknowledges you cannot add more democracy to democracy because it's not the problem. I mean, because it's not going to cure the problem. It won't resolve the problem. That's how bad democracy is. Democracy is so bad that it has the idea of thinking that, hey, man, more people vote, they dumb. Well, it's obviously a prerequisite then. The prerequisite to make sure that we have a educated public. But that's not the prerequisite. The prerequisite is voting. That's the reason why, to me, like, it's one of the many reasons why democracy is bad. If it was good, more democracy would solve it. If it was good, you need more of it. The reason, to me, it's like it's so bad that your argument, the most logical argument would be, no, the reason why democracy is failing because we don't have enough of it. So when you make the claim more democracy wouldn't solve, that proves my argument about how bankrupt democracy is. Literally.
No, it doesn't work.
How? To me, it's like when you try to attack the logic of my argument while agreeing with the historical contextualization I'm making about 250 years, and I use your components, and you use them too. You even asked me, so can you point out to me in American history where all these components existed? I said no, and I think that it flows of why democracy is bad. You think it flows of thinking why democracy can be made better. We can do democracy a little bit better, maybe it'll work. To me, one of these are obviously logically flawed, and one of these are obviously more logically sound. To me, it's obvious. It's obvious. You see what I'm saying? It's obvious to be able to point out, okay, hey, consciously, I'm going to give you 8 components. These components is democracy. I say those components never mixing is democracy. You say, yeah. How does that not prove my argument that democracy hasn't worked? Democracy can't even live to the standard it's set. To me, it's the same thing, man.
Let me give you an example.
When historically, when white people create limits and laws and they don't live up to those limits and laws, they don't think they apply to them, it creates not only injustice, but it creates a power imbalance. That same thing applies with the democracy itself. Democracy itself has never lived up to the standard it's set for itself. You and I agree on that. We disagree on a lot, but we do agree that over 250 years, democracy and the components you pointed out ain't never been there. So to me, it shows that your idea of democracy you running towards, you chasing, it's a fantasy. You're chasing a fantasy of democracy that's never existed. We disagree on a lot, but we have agreed on this. I concede and you concede that America has never had those components present. The people that's watching this got to be able to decide easily. This shows you literally how democracy has been flawed from the jump. It has never even actualized its own concepts.
I mean,
It's justified violence in the name of being undemocratic. That's undemocratic. Like literally, like to me, it's even this. The founders of democracy are the Greeks. The reason why the Greeks created democracy was to do away with the power of the aristocracy, correct? You agree with that, right? No. Democracy was brought in by the Greeks. If you don't, tell me why and tell me what it is.
The way that I understand democracy in ancient Athens was that you had the assembly, right? You would go and you would deliberate. And to be in the assembly, you had to have rhetorical skills. You had to have charisma. You had to have a speaking voice. You need not be shy. You know what I'm saying? Because if you decide that you wanted to go and vote to go to war with Sparta, once you left the assembly, you picked up your sword and your armor, got on a boat, and maybe you lived to tell about it. Okay. Now, the assembly was dominated by a group of elites. I haven't read this in a while, so I'm a little bit rusty on it. But over time, from Cleisthenes to Pericles, what you had is the elites were the ones who had everything. They believed they had everything in society to lose if the propertyless masses, the tyranny of the majority, were to go and start a war with Sparta, and now they're screwed because their assets are gone. Okay, and so they would block a lot of the stuff that happened in the assembly. Right. So over time, from Cleisthenes to Pericles, what you saw a reduction of the influence of the elites out of democracy. And then what Kagan talks about, as long as people remembered the tyranny of the oligarchy, they maintain their democracy. So I wouldn't think that it would be valid to say they created democracy specifically to dispatch the elites. Okay. Now, something is true about democracy, and that is that if our society decided as a whole that they were going to elect a fascist totalitarian dictator, and that's what they did, that would be democracy in action, because it represents the will of the people. So if you have a population that doesn't have the education, that doesn't know the ramification of what legislation does, but they're fooled by these false notions of democracy and patriotism, and they're really fueled by like racial anxieties and labor anxieties and class anxieties, then this isn't democracy that's the problem. It's the components that aren't being maintained. Democracy doesn't produce the components. It's kind of the other way around.
So the components produce democracy? What you're saying? The components produce democracy. Democracy doesn't produce the components. That's the distinction you're making here.
Right. So you have to have an educated populace to be able to elect sound leaders.
Quick question. Does the educated populace come before the democracy or after the democracy?
I mean, people have education in other systems. I mean, like university education at the beginning was strictly religious.
I understand that. What I'm asking a very straight up question. In this world democracy, where we need an educated populace, does the educated populace come before the democracy, or does the democracy bring about the educated populace? Simple question.
I mean, I would think that the educated populace comes before.
And to me, that's the reason why democracy has always been bankrupt. Because we've never had an educated populace. So if democracy existence is indicative of having an educated populace, it shows you we're gonna never be able to accomplish that because we ain't never had no educated populace. To me, if you're thinking about this, from this way, right? Think about it this way. The Greek democracy come from the Greeks. Get in my SAT etymology bag. The word demos means people. Kratos means power or rule. Democracy, coming from the 5th century BC, means rule by the people. How you say his name was? I'm a little country. Can't say his name. Cleisthenes. According to my research, Cleisthenes is often referred to as the father of Athenian democracy. He introduced political reforms in 500 AD BC that broke the power of aristocratic families and established a system where male citizens participate in government. I'm going to read that again for everybody listening, showing you how what he said is not only false, how it's not only false, but it's literally not the origins of democracy. He's saying this person's name, Cleanthes, have he said, right? This individual introduced the political reform of democracy to break the power of the aristocratic families and establish a system where male citizens, not just the royal aristocrats, could participate in governance. So you've been seeing from the very jump of democracy, it was always only intended for men. And it was always intended to deconstruct aristocratic power. That's the reason why you said popular sovereignty is a component of democracy. It's because Cleanthes understood that if we have more citizens to vote, this could take away power from the aristocrats. Showing you
several hundred years to do that.
It's always bankrupt, bro. It's never been there. It's never been there.
What's
the reason why the people in Greece right now, I'm sure we did a little genealogy. We probably can tie a lot of people in power to Greece right now, all the way back to what Cleanthes was trying to do. It's like what we do in America. The same people in America right now that was trying to fight against King George, those aristocrats, we can do a genealogy and show how the same people that's been in power from 1776 are the same people that exchanged and share power in 2025. Same shit. Showing you, though, democracy is supposed to be able to ensure popular sovereignty, rule of the people. Throughout this conversation, we've both acknowledged and illustrated how America government, especially the military, has never operated in the insurance of the people. Never. So the idea of popular sovereignty is one that is a myth in America. It's a myth. Like literally, it's a myth. So it's showing how even on face value, even if I'm defining democracy, what you say it is, it don't exist. Like it don't exist. Like that's the reason why the conversation on the phone. I was like, hey, bro, give me an example of democracy that you think is good, and I'm gonna show you how it links to everything I say is bad. You couldn't give me no example. It's still standing right now. You give me an example. What, Brazilian democracy? What, Canadian democracy? Any example you give me democracy, I'm gonna show you. No metaphor, no analogy. You feel me? It's straightforward. Hey, this democracy is tied to the enslavement of these African people and tied to the genocide or displacement of these indigenous people. Every instance of democracy is tied to that. So the only way you can say it's good, unless you're centering the Europeans that benefited the most from land conquest or enslavement. That's the only way you're gonna be able to say it's the best thing. Because think about it. Again, I spent 13 years in the state of Oklahoma around a whole bunch of different indigenous tribes. You would be devilish, demonic almost, if you said the Constitution benefited them. If you said democracy has benefited indigenous communities, I would question your humanity, bro. So don't do it. Please don't do it. I would question your humanity and your character if you said democracy and Constitution is good to indigenous Americans. I would literally question your humanity. Like, God damn, who raised you? That's evil shit. These two documents, these ideologies was made possible through the genocide of these people. So of course they don't think it's that good. The Constitution literally called them savages.
Declaration.
What do we do with this? We move past it. We move past it by doing what? Creating dialogue that has loyalty to the fellow human. When we think about popular sovereignty and how we can do for the greatest good, when we start creating governments, we start creating concepts, we should have as many voices possible to make sure we can account for everybody. See what I'm saying? Thomas Jefferson didn't do that. Cleanthes, whatever his name is, he didn't do that. Parentheses, everything, he didn't do that. These are paternalistic white men that believe they are the gift to God's earth and that whatever they say goes and whatever they claim and declare should be dictated. Democracy, when we talk about American democracy or Greek democracy, it's the same thing, bro. Some able-bodied white man believe in whatever they declare on the world should be for the whole world. And who am I to disagree? That's how we're willing to debate. Literally, so much to the point where it's like, man, America's so fucked up that even in acknowledging our creativity and innovation, we are still limited to the historical examples of what has been. We don't think that we are brilliant enough to create something outside of what has been. That's how bad democracy is. Democracy is so bad, it limits us on imagining the possibilities of what can be. Democracy is so bad, it literally curtails us into believing the only way we can have good humanity unless we can actualize the abstract, romanticized, utopian ideas of democracy. That's never happened going all the way to 500 BC. So now I'm sitting here as a black person thinking like, all right, shit, when I'm able to eat in America, to fight for that shit. Everything y'all know, fight for it. As a matter of fact, I'm speaking to you in English. You know why I'm speaking to you in English? Because English colonizers believed that my ancestors were better off being democratized and Englished and sent to the slaves, you know what I'm saying, in the New World. That's why I speak English. I speak English because the Europeans, the English specifically, believed that they were much more superior and that their way of even expressing themselves should be the way I express myself. I don't know English outside of a European colonization, a European democracy, a European capitalism. Would you agree that slavery is come from capitalism? Right? Obviously, right?
Yeah.
Slavery and American slavery is always envisioned through this lens of Athenian democracy. It's the reason why the Greeks had such a bad relationship with Africa. It was either exoticized or criminalized. I have a degree in African American studies. I debated this for 13 years across the country, debating about the Black experience, the historical implications, political implications. And this what I've gained from doing that for over a decade is that, hey, man, it's some shit that's just, hey, 2 + 2 is 4. The sky is blue. Dogs bark. Democracy has never lived up to its standard set for itself. Democracy has always been used through the history of democracy, going all the way back to 500 BC, has always been used to demonize, exclude other people. And the only reason why I think it's good because you're centering the people that wasn't excluded and that wasn't demonized. And that's what I'm arguing to be for everybody, for the entire world. The only reason why I think democracy is good because you're thinking about it through the lens of individuals that benefited the most. You're not thinking about democracy or the people that has fucked over the most. And that's the reason why I think it's good. And you think that because democracy has done so good for you, eventually get to everybody, man. Be patient. Be patient, my brother. Democracy coming, man. Be patient.
It may be true that I might be viewing democracy through like a Eurocentric lens that I might not even be aware of. But that doesn't mean that deep down inside, I don't think that that's the pathway for people to have voices in the media, for people to be able to participate. But like when we are faced with such an existential crisis as what we're dealing with right now in our political reality, I don't know if like question democracy is really the best thing to do when we need to be having a democratic revolution that puts down this counter-revolution that we're seeing so that we can start to institute this stuff. I mean, like
that's supposed to happen 250 years ago. Like literally the Constitution and American democracy was supposed to be what we was using to fight against the tyranny and fascism of King George. Literally. Like, so it's like it's a cycle. We had a democratic revolution literally to fight against the tyranny of King George, trying to quarter soldiers, tarring and feathering people. And 250 years later, we're trying to fight fascism again with the same tools. And being real, what you said, like some of you said, I wrote this down. I wrote this down right here. Because you said 20 years ago, the conversation would have been different. And I thought about this like this. We've talked about history that predates 20 years ago, where I'm already quantifying the inefficient ways and the failures and limitations of democracy. But because you can acknowledge the way in which you as a white man had to orient yourself toward democracy was different 20 years ago, you think if we had a conversation 20 years ago, it would be different. I still would hit you with the same facts about genocide, enslavement, colonization, and you 20 years ago, it wouldn't have changed much. Only thing would have been is that you would have been more blind to seeing the fascism that I see. I'm being real with you. What Trump is doing, I feel like Obama did the same thing. It was just more I don't say the same thing. I think that Obama was also enacting fascism. I think his fascism was much more an acute face. I think Joe Biden was already actualizing fascism. It was done in acute face. In America, if you have freedom of protest, freedom to press, and you have students getting their heads beat in with a baton because they said that over there is genocide, that's fascism. Ain't no way around it. That happened during Biden's presidency, seeing those college students get their head beat in for taking up their First Amendment. That's fascism. See what I'm saying? Shit, Barack Obama. So everybody care about Mexicans when Donald Trump in office. That's when everybody cared about Mexicans. But when Barack Obama was deporting a record number of Mexicans, we didn't give a damn. Shit, when Trump said something about Muslims, everybody all of a sudden cared about Islam. But when Barack Obama was literally authorizing the historical number of drone strikes towards Muslims, somebody gave a damn. This is democracy, bro. Yeah. It's about selective moral outrage. It's about selective ethical obligation. This is what democracy is to me. Selective moral outrage, selective ethical obligation. So if your political ops is doing something bad, even though you do it, you're going to say it's bad. Think about it. The Democrats could have released the Epstein files too. They didn't. These are all bipartisan games that play off each other to ensure that democracy would last for another 5,000 years. These are all games that's done that way. Democrats and Republicans can agree on healthcare, raising the minimum wage, educating us. They can't agree on banning TikTok to make sure Israel can stay though. Hey, they don't agree on nothing else, but they do agree that we should have American military. That's the most lethal military always trying to, that's what they agree on. And you know what the military full of? A whole bunch of poor Americans and people of color having to put their body on the line in the name of democracy, but it's really for corporate interests. That's really what America is. America has always been around corporate interests. The aristocrats of 13 colonies, they convinced the poor colonists to fight for them. They ain't own no goddamn tea. You poor as shit. You eat and sleep with them. As a matter of fact, you hoping these Native Americans teach you how to eat. You ain't got no jurisdiction or no investment in tea. You are poor. Same way in civil rights though. I mean, in the Civil War. Hey man, you a poor overseer. You can't even feed your goddamn self, let alone own a slave. Democracy is being able to convince somebody that their freedom is on the line when in actuality it's not. That's the reason why so many people would be like, freedom ain't free. Freedom ain't free. Talking about the military. Hey, I told all my homeboys went to the military. I looked them dead in their eyes. Hey, bro, don't disrespect me, man. Ain't nobody in my family locked up or murdered from nobody overseas. When my family looking at being locked up and being killed, it's somebody in America doing it. So when you go fight in Afghanistan, Iraq, don't tell me you fighting for my freedom, because the folks ain't jeopardizing my freedom. This propaganda right here. This is the American shit right here. You see what I'm saying? The reason why in America now, man, listen, man. Shit, what you saying? But to me, this all propaganda though, bro. This is the reason why I feel so passionate about what I'm saying, and the reason why I feel passionate about what I'm saying is because I actually took the time to go learn this. I thought about this multiple times. I've been thinking this since my critique of democracy and patriotism. I was feeling like this when they started talking about reclaiming democracy during the campaign. I just thought that it was an appropriate time to go off the rails because we're trying to get Donald Trump about it. Right. You know what I'm saying? Do I agree? Time, place for everything? Yes. But now I think it's time for us to do that though, because right now we're finna argue about who gets to define what democracy is and how it operates. Congress, currently, Trump, currently, they're giving us their idea of democracy. It's democracy, though. I want to be clear on that. It's democracy. When they're talking about conserving the Constitution or making sure we get executives, all this shit they're doing, these are all a part of the process of democracy, the policy-making process. Our policy-making process is structured by democracy. Everything that Trump is doing through policy, he has to navigate this framework of democracy. Ain't no way around this shit at all. So when we're talking about prior to 2025, talking about outlawing, you feel me, news channels, or to me, all this democracy. The good shit is democracy, the bad shit democracy. To end this little rant, how I think about it, man. A lot of times, white privilege operate by being able to talk about all the great things the white folks have done, and we get credit for that. But the bad shit white folks just did, yeah, you're being unfair now. Now you're being unfair. Now I think you're trying to, you know what I'm saying, hold me to the worst instances. To me, that's what you're doing with democracy. The good shit in democracy, you want to capture it. The bad shit you want to do, I mostly be like this. Imagine inheriting a business. And you tell the people you inherit the business from, hey, man, don't tell me nothing about the debt. Tell me the assets and profits. The assets and profits is all I want. The debt don't apply to me. They apply to the other guys. Hold on, you inheriting this, though. How you going to inherit the good shit, not the bad shit, though? To me, this whole conversation, that's what I, respectfully, that's how I think you view democracy, bro. You have it like I'm talking about this lens, the bad shit, this lens, good shit. This land's covered up. Don't talk to me nothing about the failures of democracy. I got the good shit though. And hey, you better be lucky you ain't in Afghanistan. Luckily you don't live in North Korea. You can have a social media platform and talk shit about your government. Luckily you can do that. It's like, no, bro, that doesn't resolve or mitigate any of the problems I'm talking about in democracy. But that's the argument though. To me, every time or most times Americans hear criticism of America, they say, you better be happy you're here because you could be over there. In debate, this is a non-responsive response. It doesn't negate my argument. It doesn't respond to my argument. If anything, it proves it. But to me, that's what you've done throughout this, though. It's like, hey, not this democracy. But don't you think that's good? Because you could be over there, you couldn't do it. And it's like, hey, man, America does not monopolize good shit for humans. To me, like American patriotism is so indoctrinated and so like structured around indoctrination that we've been indoctrinated in America to believe anything a government that can do good in the world is monopolized by the American government. Meaning, if you want to experience some good shit, you got to come to America. If you're not experiencing the good, like to me, it's what it be. It's like, hold on, fam. Infrastructure, it's not monopolized by democracy or America. Freedom, it's not monopolized by democracy or America. Shit, what you said, deliberation, what you said too, that's not monopolized by that. I can get this outside of that. You see what I'm saying? We know that I can get water from a well, I can get water from a faucet, I can get water from a water hose. In my mind, what you're saying is I only can get water from a well. And I'm saying that's not true. In my mind, you're saying the only water comes from democracy. I'm saying we can get water from a whole bunch of other places. Matter of fact, it's places we can get water we don't even know they exist. And I'm saying instead of me fighting you about reforming democracy, let's spend our time, effort, and energy and going to find these alternatives. Our ancestors that fought, your grandpa and my grandpa fought enough about that shit, bro. You feel me? Your grandfathers and my grandfathers, they already did that. They did this already. Why in 2025 are we having the same arguments about democracy that our great grandfathers was having? It's time to move past that. At 34, almost going 35, I'm like, shit, like, man, listen, I believe that you and I are brilliant and that we can come up with a system that is so good that the human, and you feel like we come up with something good, bro. That your grandkids, my grandkids, your sisters, your nieces and nephews can live in a world where they don't have to go through the archive about if democracy is good or not. We passed that. Like, to me, we passed that. You feel me? We really passed it. We really passed it. And I just think that it's a shame that capitalism has forced us to believe that we are limited to capitalism. That the democracy is believed that we're limited to democracy. And it's just like, no. Every time I look at this, every time I look at my thing right here and see that, was it Cleanthes? How you say it? How you say this name? What's his name?
I think it's pronounced Cleisthenes, like 4 syllables.
That sounds more correct than what I'm saying. Cleisthenes. Cleisthenes created the idea of democracy in the 5th century BCE. I believe, my understanding of world history, that there are other examples of great humane governments that's ethical and moral that predates Cleanthes, whatever his name is. And then even that, we can come up with something better. Like, we come up with something better. We can invent better cars. We can invent better technology. We can invent better governments, bro. That's something to get behind, right? We're talking about we got innovation to technology. We got innovation to everything else. But government. Our government got to be stuck in 1776 with Thomas Jefferson. That's crazy to me. Thomas Jefferson can never fathom a nigga like me expressing myself the way I'm expressing it. No, I don't want to go by him. Like, no, I don't like think about it. Thomas Jefferson has such a pathological understanding of slave people. The way he did Sally Hemings and his sisters, like, literally, they didn't view black people as being thinkers, thought leaders. I see myself as a thinker, a thought leader. Thomas Jefferson in his time couldn't even fathom me existing. No, I don't want to go by his government. I don't. Think about it. I would be hung on a tree for talking to you the way I've talked to you. I haven't cussed you out. I ain't insulted you, but I'm hyphy. I'm turned up. I got a degree in African-American studies. So I know the laws of the plantation and the laws of Jim Crow. And what I know is that if I conducted myself the way I'm conducting myself right now, 200 years ago, might kill my family too. Just teach their ass a lesson. Just make sure y'all don't, just so y'all know y'all can never talk to no white man like this. I'm going to take care of all of y'all. I'm taking your foot, your nail, your arm, you feel me? And I'm killing your brother. This is democracy, bro. You feel me? And to me, it's like, to me, it's like, hey, the founding fathers, that's how they moved. They wrote the Constitution. The Constitution didn't outlaw them hanging niggas, though. The Constitution didn't outlaw them hanging Indians. So how good's the Constitution really in? See what I'm saying? Especially if you black or you native, you don't say it's not good. So bring it back to the thing. We're forced to look at the democracy through the lens of white men. And we have to be held accountable for how we see it different than white men. I'm pretty sure that if Fox News or a future employer came by this damn live stream, I'm not getting that job. I'm not getting that promotion. No, I'm not getting an interview. Fox News, they finna have a field day. They gonna talk about how Donald Trump is not abiding by the Constitution or democracy. Here goes this angry, passionate black man with dreadlocks and some tattoos and his muscle shirt saying that we should do away with the Constitution. Not knowing I'm a former professor, not knowing that I, you know what I'm saying? Listen, whatever school Republicans went to in college, I used to bust their ass in debate. Whatever school, whatever, I'm talking about literally whatever school any Republican went to, they got a debate team. While I was debating a debate coach, I was busting their ass. I say that not to brag, but I say that to say I've thought about this. I've debated people on this. It's not something I just woke up in the morning and was like, no. And I keep on looking at my bookshelf. I'm looking at a book by Michael Harriot, Black as Fuck History. I'm looking at Black Against the Empire. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking at this intersectionality book by some sociologists. I'm looking at these books. Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. You know what I'm saying? Blood and Guts. Like I'm seeing all these books and thinking about, hey man, this shit's so complex and intersected that every intersection to me illustrates how democracy is bad. Or I got right here pointing out, commerce also existed outside of capitalism. Trade existed outside of capitalism. So if you see me engaging in commerce or trade, capitalism does not monopolize commerce. Commerce predates capitalism. It's like freedom predates democracy. Like deliberation predates democracy. Like fairness predates democracy. Somehow in America, we believe that capitalism and democracy monopolize certain concepts, and the only way we can access those concepts is by going through these forms of government or by going through these forms of economy. It's like that's just it's just like it's not good, bro. It's just not smart. It's just not smart. This is not smart. This is not smart, man. But I said I'm gonna say I thought this was a great 2 hour. I was gonna go live 30 minutes, but you got me turned up, Eric. So I appreciate you, Eric. I really do appreciate you. People watching this, I would love to have more conversations like this.
That's what democracy is good, so good for. No, but hey, like I think that without conversations like this, we don't have a country. It doesn't matter if we agree on democracy or not. I think we have to do something about where we're at, regardless of what kind of system we use to fill the vacuum. You know what I'm saying? With all that's going on and all of the threats to the way of life that we've been talking about this whole time, I feel like like I said, this conversation would have been better 20 years ago, but it's kind of like now, if you talk about abandoning the Constitution and abandoning democracy, and then, we've got these forces out there that I don't want to live under. I certainly don't. And then if we could get away from that first, and then talk about like a post-democracy government that benefits everybody, I'm down for that. But like in the meantime, it's like the other option out there is what's coming down the line. And I'm at a point in my life where I don't think that what's coming can be stopped. But if I have one more thing to say, it's this, is that I think at the end of the day, a society requires an honest and principled dialogue about our past if we can even begin to pretend to overcome the challenges of reconciliation. And that's what I want to base my future work around. And if that means that it happens somewhere else, like Canada, if I have to flee, then But anyway, I really appreciate you. I had never watched any of your videos before. You asked some very compelling and some very provocative questions, and I think that's we need to have more of that. So thank you, Mr. Lee, for everything that you're doing and for allowing me to come on here and talk about democracy, which I think is really important.
Yeah, for
Right?
sure. I appreciate you for reaching out. I think that we had technically we've been talking for like 4 hours almost.
Yeah.
I like talking to you though, man. I feel like you get my wheels turning, make me think about some different shit, make me think on my toes. So it's been cool. And I think that even though I ain't like the FBA dudes, if I don't know what I'm talking about, I think there were different times that I've debated people on my platform, though I disagree with them. They've forced me to think on my toes and forced me to be creative in the way I'm interpreting what's happening and be creative in how I'm going to express a response. And I think that that's what I appreciated in this conversation, Eric. I know that everybody listening didn't agree with everything I said. Everybody listening didn't agree with everything Eric said. But I think this is what's important about dialogue, is how we create deliberation that allows for us to deliberate in ways for us to exchange ideas, in ways for us to view different things, different vantage points, in hopes that our humanity, that our ethics, that our morals become much stronger for us to be able to account for each other. At the end of the day, I'm really doing this out of love. Like, I want to move beyond the Constitution and democracy in the name of love and preserving humanity. And thinking about the way that love and humanity is preserved, I don't like the way in which democracy and capitalism and all these things has done it. And that's the reason why I'm moving to move past it. It's not a anti-peace or anti-human, or, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I said the ways in which these two particular systems operate, I would argue they're inherently dehumanization. They dehumanize. And because they dehumanize, I think that we should move past it, especially in the name of minority rights. But yeah, man, I'm going to say a few more things, man. You can feel free to stay on for to make the screen full. I'm going to say a few things, last thing to the audience. I really appreciate you though, man.
Thank you. If I can say one more thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what I would suggest for people to think about going forward is there's a lot of things that are going on in society, and I think that they're designed to deliberately inflict trauma upon us, and they're trying to affect us on the metabolic level, but through stress and the loss of income that comes through stress and missing your job because you're sick. And I think no matter what happens in this country, we have to not let it affect us on an emotional level that we can't get out of bed because we're so depressed, or that we're so consumed with anger that we can't think straight. We have to just, survive this crisis that we're in, whether it was COVID or whether it's what's coming down the pipe. I think we just had to survive. We had to live through this so that we can fight another day and not let this stuff affect us to the point that's going to kill us through disease and stress. So anyway, thank you so much for your opportunity, for your time, and I really appreciate you. So nice to meet you, Mr. Lee.
Definitely, man. Definitely, man. Really shout out to Eric for having this conversation with me, and shout out to all over 1,000 of y'all that's coming through this live stream. I really appreciate having conversations like this. I know that my content and myself, I'm an acquired taste. I know that everybody don't like it, everybody don't agree with it. When I say I'm an acquired taste, though, I think that I'm going to stand on speaking truth to power and acknowledge, and I'm cool with everybody not liking it. I think in this conversation about democracy, we should really think about the implications, the political, social, economic implications around democracy, especially us as Black people, and thinking about how we get our liberation, how we get freedom, how we get safety, and really thinking about how democracy can be or not be a thing to get us to that. You know what I'm saying? I know that reform, you know what I'm saying, shout out to Tyrone, is something that we all think about. I think that me coming from a more Black radical tradition of talking about systems, I'm usually against reform. You know what I'm saying? Especially if we having a debate. Now I get, you know what I'm saying, in terms of pragmatism, you feel me? Y'all ain't about the revolutionary shit. So we got to use what we got. But if enough of y'all on some revolutionary shit, we can do something. But I want to tell CIA, FBI, I know y'all listening. Don't Fred Hampton me. You know what I'm saying? What I am saying though is that you can live a little better too, FBI, CIA, if you allow for this shit to operate in a much more ethical, moral way, instead of you always moving in line for your corporate daddies. You see what I'm saying? Instead of you moving in line for big business. Right now, America really trying to, you know what I'm saying? America really fighting with itself. The verdict ain't out yet on who's gonna win. The powerful side of America usually wins. But a lot of us sick and tired of being sick and tired, man. Education is elevation. Research over me search. I got to do a live stream with my buddy from South Carolina. If you're on this, I apologize. My impulsive ADHD ass was having a conversation with somebody. I turned it into a live. I missed it. Spontaneous percussion.